Welcome back to the Collector Shift channel. Today I'm joined by our head of research, Matt, to discuss the aftermath of the latest banking collapse and what this means for Bitcoin. Welcome, Matt. Can you kick us off with what happened at a high level?
Yeah, sure, Nick. It was, definitely the craziest week of this young year in 2023 so far. I'm sure there's probably going to be some more crazy weeks, but high level, what happened? There was probably going back, 7th or so of March, there was a crypto-friendly bank, a relatively small bank called Silvergate, all things considered. They announced that they were going to, fail. They declared liquidity essentially, or illiquidity, and said, that's curtains for us. And then came along Silicon Valley Bank, or SVB. This is the one most people would have seen all over the news. Even the local news here in Australia, it was covered. They collapsed in a more traditional way, essentially just running out of money to pay their depositors or customers. That then also involved in that was the collapse of the other of the two sort of most crypto-friendly banks in the US. So one of them was Silvergate, which already shut up shop, and then there was also Signature Bank. So this was a much bigger bank than Silvergate, and this was more of a surprising one within the crypto community. They're a bit suspicious on how that sort of ended up getting closed and ordered to shut down. So we had three major bank collapses all in this time. Stablecoin, one of the most popular stablecoins in crypto, absolutely lost its peg. Started falling, and there was a lot of panic over the weekend. I'll just get up my screen here. Sorry, Nick. Over at Collective Shift, this is kind of where we sort of do our best work, in my opinion, in terms of just sort of walking members through, because there was a lot of fear going through the space, as I said. So Sunday the team jumped on, told members not to worry, things will probably get better, which they did, and then Checkmate came in and gave a bit of a deeper analysis on what was going on with this SV bank. So just another sort of, value there for members, and ultimately happy to discuss here today sort of the implications now that the dust has started to settle.
Yeah, it's chaotic week. One of perhaps the most chaotic weeks, in the last couple of years, which is saying a lot considering we've had a lot of mayhem hit the market.
100%.
A lot of people have been talking about the banking collapse as being crypto related. People might misconstrue that it was a crypto failure in some of these banks. Maybe you can shed some light on why this wasn't a crypto failure, but actually a macro failure for Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah, for the biggest one, Silicon Valley Bank, a top 20 bank in the US, so quite large. Still about a tenth of the size of the biggest one, but still very big headline grabbing news around the world. Their failure, again, as I said, was just a failure to pay depositors. They essentially ran out of available funds that they had on hand to pay their customers, who were all demanding to withdraw their money in what's called a bank run, as people probably sort of have heard that term, when everyone just rushes to the bank or on their phones or whatnot to withdraw funds. And that's sort of what the situation there became. And, why did that happen? Was it crypto's fault? Definitely not the case. It was more a case, a reflection on the management of Silicon Valley Bank, who really, it was just failing to manage their balance sheet, in a sound way, to ensure that they, weren't losing so much money on, banks have this particular way of managing their assets and liabilities where they invest in bonds and whatnot. They essentially did this very blasé, end up losing a lot of money, which is what triggered the angst and uncertainty amongst the public once they declared how much they were losing. And this sort of got the spiral going. And, all things considered, it's called a crypto-friendly bank, Silicon Valley, but I don't personally enjoy the fact that it's been roped in with Signature Bank and Silvergate, because all things considered, it was more for the tech sector in San Francisco in particular. Crypto was just a minor sort of customer of Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah, so I guess at a high level, it's just a mismatch of, I think, current liabilities when you're having all these people withdraw and the assets that they had, but with rising rates, it just meant that I think they had a lot of unrealized losses and just didn't hedge correctly. And I think it was just a classic example of like a bank failure in terms of like assets and liabilities.
Yeah, yeah. The reason why it failed is always that there's a mismatch, and then I suppose the factors behind that uniquely, as you said, this has been a big talking point. It's more just been, at a very high level. It has been the Federal Reserve, all the central banks raising rates very aggressively the past 12 months or so. This almost like exacerbated and sort of made the problem come to fruition, and all these heavy losses that they had to realize were arguably not the result or a primary driver was the central bank's aggressive raising.
And we saw we saw the US government had to step in and guarantee these deposits, because I think something like 90% of the Silicon Bank deposits were like uninsured because they were taking on a lot of like high value clients. This is what I think has spread a lot of maybe rally in Bitcoin, because we saw Bitcoin hit a 9-month high in amongst all the turmoil, highest price since June, rising above 26,000. I guess a lot of people are wondering, is this where Bitcoin shines? Because, Bitcoin was born out of, the great financial crisis, and it was no mistake that the first block was created with a headline relating to banking failure in the market.
Yeah, as I get up my screen here, it's Nick. The people might remember, Bitcoin was born rose from essentially the ashes of the financial crisis. People sort of like to refer it to, and this is a headline there on the newspaper there, which was coded into the very first block, as you said, in Bitcoin, and it was almost like taking us back down towards that global financial crisis. The events from the weekend were really, the government's stepping in to backstop and, almost, bring confidence back into the public about their confidence in the banking system. It more or less brought people back to realizing, or helping people realize, the value of Bitcoin as sort of this sort of version or a store of value, type of non-state currency that isn't really tied to the modern day fiat system and the modern day banking system. So it is definitely a reason, in my opinion, why we've seen the prices really rally in recent days, and to 9 months highs, in fact.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating case, because although I think it wasn't classified as a bailout, technically there was sort of tricky wording in saying that the taxpayer isn't going to be held accountable to pay for these backstopping for these banks. But I'm not sure if you feel a similar way, that it's an insight into what will happen potentially if we see any more failures in the banking system like we did see all those years ago. And in that case, I think Bitcoin will definitely thrive in an environment where governments have to step in to bail out more banks and more financial institutions. Not sure if you've seen Credit Suisse, Suisse, a lot of these other massive financial institutions potentially being unstable. So I'm not sure what's your outlook for the next year or so.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think they've allayed sort of fears at the moment, the US authorities, but, there continues to be, some nerves around, the solvency of some probably more medium tier sort of US banks, and then also some international ones. So as you said, Credit Suisse is one of them for sure. And that's I think it's like a 45th sort of rank in the world in terms of the biggest bank, even after, hemorrhaging sort of value in the past decade or so. Just the more that this continues to happen, if there are more collapses where they're backstopped by that relevant country's, authorities, central bank or treasury, the more it will just continue to legitimize Bitcoin, which, day after day, continues to just, add new blocks to its blockchain and continues to just function as per normal as it has the past 14 years or so.
Yeah, it's a interesting case study. I know I saw a few interesting tweets that were alluding to finally we may be seeing Bitcoin get to live through or have a prime case of its use case, of being such a stable alternative asset amongst a lot of these fiat tied global assets. So interesting to see if that holds up. I'm kind of in the same vein as you, that I'm really looking forward to seeing how Bitcoin can, continue to go strength to strength in this environment. And if anybody who wanted to read Matt's full report, head to the Collective Shift website at collectiveshift.io. As this post, was recently published on the platform, and it's the type of example of content that we produce to help our valued members save time and make more informed decisions. So again, to read the full report, head over to Collective Shift and sign up to one of our membership offerings.